And that was Monk's Dream from the new Mike Clark album, Carnival of Souls. We've got Mike Clark on the phone. That last set we played two things from your new album. We also played something from your album called Live at the Fox Theater in Boulder, and then we played some old Headhunters. So let's talk about each one of those if we could.
Please,
yeah.
I'd love to.
Well, first
Absolutely.
off, Monk's Dream from the new album. Let's talk about that. How did that come about? How did you choose that tune to do?
I'm a big Thelonious Monk fan.
Oh yeah.
Since high school, I love his writing. I love his playing. I just did the whole deal. It's Monk. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So, I usually play at least one Thelonious Monk tune per set. And Jerry Z came in one time, and he was the doodly boop boobly ooba whap, just goofing around. And I went, okay, tonight we're playing Monk's Dream, and Rob was playing, and he went, okay, cool, and that was it. And we played it live at the Jazz Kitchen in Indianapolis, and it went down so good. I went, okay, we're recording that, and everybody was like, okay, we're down.
Yeah,
and that's what happened.
It's just real easy.
It was really easy,
yeah.
and it went one take, and I didn't even go in and listen to it. You know how a lot of times, Todd, you record a lot, and how you're recording, you go in and listen to it. This one, I just, in my instinct, said, no, I'm not even going to bother to redo that. We did it. Everybody was like, yeah, but, and I'm like, no, that's it. See you later.
And the book was closed. Yeah.
And the book was closed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but before that, we played some Headhunters from the album Flood. We played Actual Proof. That's a different version than the one that you're really, really famous for. But we did play that last time we did an interview with you, and that's just an amazing, amazing track, Actual Proof, and it did sort of catapult you into, I guess I would say, jazz funk stardom. Is that kind of fair to say? I mean, people still talk about
jazz,
that.
funk, history.
Yeah.
I like the word stardom, but to me it feels more like history. Definitely I'm woven into the fabric of jazz history by that one track, not even the whole album, just that one track. But that particular, I have a little story to tell
Sure.
on that one. Okay, that one I used in my jazz kit. On Thrust, I used whatever drum set they had in the studio, and
right.
Naturally they had a big bass drum, a 22 probably, or something like that. I don't remember the type of drums, but this was my jazz set. So it had an 18-inch bass drum, so it was a small with K cymbals. So when we recorded it, it has a much different sound than what you heard on Thrust, which is a studio
right.
set. Or maybe it was my set. Maybe I had I can't remember. That's a shame, isn't it? But so this was more like a jazz performance. I played it more in the style of how I was playing jazz music at that time, so that's why it came off like that. And a lot of musicians who heard this version prefer it much more to the Thrust version.
Right. Well, Herbie plays acoustic piano on this one. It's a different kind of vibe.
And he plays acoustic, and I play the small kit. So even though Paul plays electric, it came off more of like an acoustic type thing, but a jazz type thing is what I mean to say. But here's the hook. We recorded it that night. We recorded another night, and we were so happy about it, and it sounded so good that we all went out and had drinks afterwards, and the Japanese promoters took us to this place at the New Otani Hotel that overlooked the whole city, and when everybody drank a little too much. So we were celebrating the fact that it sounded so good because we went out into the truck. They had a recording truck there, and we listened to it. Okay, the next night we get to the gig in Osaka, and there's a recording truck there, and we're like, no, we can't do that twice in a row. I mean, like, especially after, we're a little bit hungover. So, and Herbie's manager wouldn't know the difference between a good night and a bad night. He really didn't have a musical thing going on. He was more like a businessman, and sometimes he'd interfere with the music rather than help it along.
Right.
And, I mean, it's just the nature of the music business. You run into guys like that. He wasn't a bad guy, but he did. So I said right away, oh, man, let's not record tonight. I told Herbie that because, like this guy, he might pick... we can't get it any better than we did last night. And Herbie was like, yeah, but the truck's here. We got to do it. And I'm like, oh, man. So what you're hearing on there, even though everybody really liked it, was not as good as the first night. And sure enough, he didn't know the difference, and he picked that night. And the other night is Sony Still Has, and it's a much superior. Like, there's no other innovations, or technically nothing's any better, but everything's much more clear. It's crystal clear and sharp, whereas the next night, we're kind of like struggling to be as good as we were the first night.
Right.
Make it. And that's the truth.
Wow, so they're sitting on something that's better than Flood.
Yeah, it's better than Flood.
Oh,
yeah. It's what we thought Flood was going to be, but like I say, my man didn't know the difference. He's like, just put one of them out there. It's fine. It doesn't matter. You run into stuff like this when you're a musician, and they don't hear the music like we do because they're not involved in the process. I mean, this is what we do, and that's why, like, critics and what have you, most of them don't play. So it's when I critique their critiques, I can tell what they're hearing by what they write.
Right. Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It's just like I'd rather have a musician who knows what's going on critique my stuff, even if he says something that's not favorable, because I know he's hearing what's up, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That very rarely happens, though. That very rarely happens.
Yeah, if ever, you know.
Yeah.
Or a guy plays a little bit of rock and roll guitar, that makes him a critic, you know.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Now, before that, we heard something from an album from a couple of years back, the Live at the Fox Theater in Boulder, which I think is still only available as an import. But we played a Charlie Hunter track with Charlie Hunter on it called Maestri Tata, where you introduced everybody in the band, and that's a pretty interesting band. And those guys, you toured with a lot of those guys for a while, did you not?
I toured with that band there, that actual band right there, for quite a while. Sometimes we'd add DJ Logic when he could make it. Mm-hmm. And we toured for about 4 years. And I had a tour bus out, and we did very well. We sold out the Fillmore tour 3 times. We sold out everywhere. It was remarkable. The only thing was, for me, is with the exception of Fred Wesley, these were not jazz musicians, so it was a little bit limiting musically for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if I started to stretch out and play, cats would get lost or get bugged, or they were still trying to figure out how to play a pocket, and they could. I'm not saying they were, they were still like at that stage where a guy plays straight time and tries to get it as good as. And I'd been through that before the Headhunters, and I wasn't at that same space. I was more of an improvising type guy. Although what's interesting is any of those guys can improvise anytime they want to, but they were at that age where it's like, hey man, let's get the groove, and they'd listen to the groove and find one little flaw wrong with the groove, and then they'd be, oh man, right there, the one backbeat was a little early or late, and I'd be like, bro, bad breath and all, come on, this is real live music. You know what I mean? I don't want to put this under a microscope. What kind of funk is that if you put it under a microscope? Right. I mean, you can hear if it's rushing or dragging, and if it's too dramatic, then okay, we got to do something. But other than that, not me.
Right, yeah. Well, those guys, I believe, in their defense, I believe those guys did turn a lot of people on to you and a lot of the older jazz/funk stuff. So I believe they were very enamored of all the stuff that you came up doing, and
oh yeah, no, these are great guys, and I didn't mean it to sound, I guess it did sound a little weird, but what I mean is they were kind of trying to do what I'd already done with the Headhunters like 25 years before I met those guys, right? And they weren't trying to do exactly that, but it was pretty much the same stuff. And so I'm a improvising guy, Right. I came up on Philly Joe Jones and Elvin Jones, and so I can't, if I'm going to play straight time, then I want a singer to be there, like James Brown or Bobby Blue Bland, or you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Then it makes sense. But you have a bunch of guys playing solos, and the drums are just playing time, and there's no vocals. To me, a little bit of that is cool, but a lot of it gets boring. But oddly enough, I don't mind hearing another guy do it. If it's not me, I like to hear other guys do it. It's a weird brain that I have, man.
Well, you did sort of, I thought it was really cool that because there was a whole generation of players there about 10 years ago, which a lot of these guys are on this album, that they all seem to be very enamored of both the organ stuff and the Herbie and the Headhunters stuff and all that, and I think that you really saw a resurgence from bands like Galactic and Soul Live and the Grey Boy All Stars and so on like that.